What's happening, y'all? Corey Buschlen from Fantasy Stock Exchange coming at you to bring you the Week 13 DFS recap. As I do every Monday, I go over the FanDuel Sunday Million contest winner and the DraftKings Millionaire Maker contest winners as well. Break down their lineups, where they spent up, what kind of ownership percentages they were looking at, some of the stacks and correlations that they were going through, so on and so forth, so we can take away from their lineup to bring to our own lineups. I also review my own lineups as well. Kind of took it on the chin this week after basically finishing in first place in an afternoon-only contest last week and having a great week. I had probably the worst week of the entire season so far this week. So if you guys do want my GPP lineup advice, of course, you can catch my GPP articles on the Draft Sharks website, both for FanDuel and for DraftKings. But let's get right into this. Let's not waste any more time. This was the DraftKings Millionaire Making winning contest, basically. As you guys can see, this guy did go with Gardner Minshew, who, of course, was a popular play, a punt play, $4,000 quarterback for a lot of people once Jalen Hurts was ruled out, because they did have the Jets matchup. Of course, Gardner Minshew was $4,000 on DraftKings, which is like the min price for quarterbacks. And what this guy did was stack Gardner Minshew with Dallas Goedert, who obviously had the huge game, 31 points in that one. Also went with a 2 tight end build, went with George Kittle in the traditional tight end spot, played Dallas Goedert in the flex, which we've seen 2 tight end builds win the Millionaire Maker, I think 3 times now this season. Also went with a mini stack Jamal Williams with Justin Jefferson. Of course, Justin Jefferson had a monster game on DraftKings in the full PPR format. Correlated the Rams defense with the Sony Michel play. If the Rams were up, they might be running the ball. That's exactly what happened. And typically, I don't like playing one-offs that were going to be highly owned, like this guy did with Deontay Johnson and with Chris Godwin. But I think Deontay Johnson definitely came in a little bit less owned than I expected. And Chris Godwin, of course, had a big game. This week was very strange for a lot of reasons, because a lot of the chalk plays that everybody expected to be very good did actually, in fact, hit. So if you faded the chalk like I did in a lot of places, then you probably didn't have the greatest week overall. So, sometimes we got to go process over a result. If we fade the chalk and it doesn't work out, sometimes we just got to take that one on the chin, knowing that if we did, fade the chalk and it worked out, then we would have climbed the leaderboards a lot more. So speaking of fading the chalk and it not working out, let's look at my first lineup here. And this was my only winning lineup of the week. I think I spent like $200 or $200 something this week. This was the only lineup that I actually min cashed in, or 3x my money in. Pretty rough, I would say, overall. I had this lineup in 2 contests, but I actually late swapped out some of the chalk in my other lineup that looked just like this when I built it for some lower owned plays in the other one. And I left this one the exact same as I did as I built it. Like I said, the chalk was very, very good this week. As you guys can see, Brady was the chalkiest quarterback. He hit. Gibson, one of the chalkiest running backs, he hit. Justin Jefferson, Chris Godwin, popular wide receivers plays, they both hit. Sony Michel, of course, the chalkiest probably running back play. Traditionally, when Darrell Henderson was ruled out, a lot of people were gravitating towards Sony Michel. He also hit in this one. So Barkley and Hawkinson at that ownership, I did really love those guys. They were both featured in my article. Saquon Barkley, again, you're attacking the usage. You're attacking the fact that this guy was getting a great workload, and eventually it was going to result in some fantasy production. He got a lot of receptions, just not very efficient on those receptions. And same goes for what he did with his carries as well. But 2.7% Saquon Barkley for the workload level that he was going to get. And of course, the breakaway speed and the breakaway talent that he is. I'm okay eating that 13.4 point performance that he did, because I think that's like a middling range of outcomes. If he had hit his high end, I think that would have been a great play. Same goes for TJ Hawkinson. He did end up catching a touchdown in this one at 1.1% ownership. That was definitely awesome to see. Brady, Godwin, and Scotty Miller. My thought process behind this was pretty solid in my opinion. The only problem was that I was a little off on the usage. So what we had seen 2 weeks ago, we knew Antonio Brown was going to be out for this game. We had seen Tyler Johnson be the guy that was traditionally lining up as the number 3 wide receiver, but they did sign Brashad Perryman 2 weeks ago, and he has basically overcome the Tyler Johnson and Scotty Miller duo as a new number 3 wide receiver in this offense. So what I should have done was stacked Tom Brady, Godwin, and Brashad Perryman, hoping for a long touchdown for Brashad Perryman, et cetera, et cetera. Definitely didn't work out for me. My thought process was that I would fade Mike Evans and play Scotty Miller instead, in case that Mike Evans doesn't catch a long touchdown, but Scotty Miller does catch a long touchdown, which is not what happened, of course. And Scotty Miller only played like 5 or 6 snaps on offense, which was definitely not what you wanted to see. Now, this lineup was, like I said, it was the exact same build as my other lineup. The only difference was my RB1 and my flex option. So initially I had, as you guys saw in the other lineup, Gibson as my RB1, and my flex was Sony Michel. I knew those guys were going to get very, very high ownership. And I was currently, I think I was at $150. So 3Xing my money after the 1 p.m. games because I did have Jefferson. I did have Godwin, who obviously had great games. But the problem was that I wanted to really, really climb the leaderboards, right? And anytime that I'm in a situation where I can hop the field, if the chalk misses, I'm going to take that opportunity. If Gibson and Michelle had missed and I played Mitchell and Logan Thomas, I would have really, really climbed the leaderboards. Now, of course, I did miss on the ownership projection for Elijah Mitchell. I did not think he would be that highly owned. I thought he would be about a 10% owned running back. 37.2%, definitely not what I wanted to see. So I swapped off of Gibson and Michelle to Mitchell and Thomas. Worked out for me initially at the beginning of the 4 p.m. games, but as the day went along and as those guys weren't as productive, it started to get worse and worse for me to the point that I even fell out of min cash range. So that was definitely not ideal. My mistake was that I should have swapped to Jacobs instead of Elijah Mitchell because the ownership was basically the same from Mitchell to Gibson, as obviously Josh Jacobs was only like 1% owned. So that would have been a much better late swap for me to do. I went aggressive on the late swap, didn't work out. But can't be too mad at it. Always go for the climb the leaderboard play, and it just didn't work out for me in this one. Now, the final DraftKings lineup that I had, and then I'll get into FanDuel before I go on too long, was in the SPY lineup, the $100 entry SPY lineup. And this one was just simply a result of game selection. I really liked the Lamar Jackson stack. And the reason I liked it was because I thought that game was going to be a lot more higher scoring than it was. Of course, the sharps, the pace, the betting lines all told me that this game is not going to be high scoring, but I went against the grain, thought it would work out, and it definitely did not. Lamar Jackson didn't have the greatest game, nor did Marquise Brown. Pat Freiermuth on the run back. DK Metcalf was a play I was very excited about as a pivot play off of some of the popular wide receivers like Godwin, like Evans, like Keenan Allen. Again, the chalk hit. The DK Metcalf contrarian play did not hit, and that definitely didn't work out for me. Austin Eckler as a sub 10% running back. I figured if the Chargers game, Justin Herbert, Keenan Allen, those guys missed, it would have been because of Austin Eckler running in a bunch of touchdowns, something like that. So again, I would say that my process overall was pretty solid in this. I'm very happy with how the ownership turned out in this lineup. The chalk just hit, and sometimes that's going to happen. And Brandon Ayuk, to me, I was going to go with Christian Kirk, but they did announce that game was going to be a bit of, rough weather. So I pivoted off of Christian Kirk, figured because my lineup was pretty low owned in general, I could have pivoted to a bit of a chalkier play in Brandon Ayuk. Like I said, just a lot of unlucky things happening in this one. Eckler, Metcalf, etc. They all just had bad games. So moving on to the FanDuel side of things, and we actually had 2 people win the FanDuel Sunday Million. So the same lineup was the winner for 2 people. They had a tie at the top with 219.52 fantasy points. And like I said, all the chalk hit this week. As you guys can see, the Sunday Million lineup, a contest with that many people in it, had this ownership level as the winning lineup. As you guys can see in this lineup, there's only 2 plays that were under 10% owned. Everybody else was relatively popular. Brady, Michelle, Godwin, Keenan Allen, Justin Jefferson, George Kittle, Antonio Gibson. None of these guys were surprising anybody by having good games. A lot of chalk in this lineup. This was just one of those weeks that if you are a fade the chalk type of person, like I typically am, I usually look for leverage and contrarian plays in most situations. The fact that all the chalk was hitting in this week was definitely the type of week that I am not going to win a whole lot of money in. The only correlation in this guy's lineup was Brady to Godwin. He didn't have any other correlation throughout the entirety of the lineup. This is not the way I would suggest building lineups like this for the Sunday Million contest. This guy 100% got lucky. Usually you want to be, limiting yourself to 3 or 4 popular plays per lineup. This guy had 7 popular plays in his lineup, and it just happened to work out for him. 9-player parlay, all chalk lineup. Definitely not how you want to build it. Typically, you want to build it similar to how I built it. Now, it's pretty easy for me to say that because I built the lineup and that guy won the Sunday Million, but it's true. This is the way you typically want to build your lineups. A couple popular plays for sure, but more often than not, you want to be looking for leverage. And I will say this lineup could have worked out very well for me. Zach Wilson to Elijah Moore, that was a pretty good stack that I had. The only issue is that I ran it back with Devontae Smith when I could have ran it back with Dallas Goedert. And Dallas Goedert obviously was the one who had the big game, not Devontae Smith. So that would have, increased my scoring a lot. And same goes for the mini stack that I did. I did the Chargers and Bengals mini stack with Austin Eckler and Jamar Chase. They obviously did not score a whole lot relative to their teammates. If I had went with T. Higgins and Keenan Allen on the other side, I would have done a lot better on that mini stack. So again, if I had just changed those 2 decisions, this is a lineup that probably would have done very well in this contest. I continue to go back to the Zach Wilson well. because he scored 22 fantasy points at 0.4% ownership. And I think he has a higher ceiling than people realize. The rushing touchdowns, the ability to create some big plays. So I do really like using him in huge contests like this, large field tournaments like the Sunday Million contest, because nobody plays Zach Wilson. As you guys can see, 0.4%. One of DJ and Gibson were solid as well. Of course, those were two of the popular plays that I chose to go with. And if I had made those other decisions correctly, then maybe this lineup would have been at the top of the leaderboards as well. So that is all, guys. As I mentioned, if you guys do want my lineup advice, check out the articles. Check out the Draft Sharks website for more contest advice. We also have it for Showdown. If you guys play Thursday night, Monday night, or Sunday night DFS, you can check out that advice in the premium section of our website. So peace out, guys, and I'll talk to you soon.